All right, so we're going to dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad today. And, this one I think is really going to get us thinking differently about money. We've got excerpts from the audiobook and some really interesting commentary to unpack. So, are you ready to see what Kiyosaki's wisdom has in store for us when it comes to building wealth?
You know, it's funny. When I think about Kiyosaki, what always strikes me is how he starts with his own story. You know, those two dads, the poor dad and the rich dad. It's just such a brilliant way to frame those two kind of opposing views on money that we kind of grow up with.
Yeah, it's like having these two voices in your head, right? With like one saying, hey, go to school, get good grades, find a secure job, which, by the way, is what a lot of us are raised to believe. And
Exactly.
then there's this other voice saying, no, 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 study hard so you can find a good company to buy. Like, whoa, it really makes you question everything.
It's a totally different way of looking at things, right?
Yeah.
Kiyosaki is not just saying, oh, you need to make a lot of money to be financially successful. It's about being financially literate, like
Hmm.
understanding how money actually works and acquiring assets that generate more wealth.
It's about making your money work for you, not the other way around, right?
100%. And you know what always sticks with me is that story he tells about all those crazy wealthy men back in the 1920s.
Hmm.
They had it all right. Fortunes beyond imagination. But because they lacked that financial intelligence, it vanished just as quickly as it came.
That's a scary thought, right? It's like no matter how much money you have, if you don't know how to manage it or make it grow, it can disappear just like that.
Exactly. It's like building a house on sand without a strong foundation.
Yeah.
So when the storms come, which they always do, you're left with nothing.
So how does Kiyosaki suggest we approach this whole money thing differently then? What are some of those key principles he emphasizes?
Well, one of the biggest things is this whole idea of assets and liabilities. He challenges us to rethink what we consider an asset because we've been conditioned to think about certain things like our house as this great big asset, when in reality, it might actually be a liability.
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because we're practically raised to believe that owning a home is the American dream, that it's like this cornerstone of financial security.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, homeownership can be great. But Kiyosaki's point is that it's not always as straightforward as we think.
Yeah.
You have to look at the bigger picture, the hidden costs involved.
So it's not about saying never buy a house. It's more about asking yourself, is this house actually putting money in my pocket or is it constantly taking money out?
Exactly.
Right.
It's about being honest with yourself about your financial situation and making sure your money is working for you, not against you.
Okay, so let's say you're on board with this whole idea of building assets. Real estate is often a popular choice, but I know a lot of people are terrified of becoming landlords. All that I don't want to fix toilets stuff Kiyosaki talks about.
Yeah, and his response to that is brilliant. He's not saying you have to be this hands-on landlord. He's all about finding properties that generate passive income. He talks about buying a house for $25,000 and flipping it for $95,000, or that $2,000 investment that turned into $1 million asset. That's the power of leverage and making smart investments.
Okay, so how do you even begin to spot those opportunities? It seems so overwhelming.
Well, this is where the importance of education comes in. Kiyosaki is a big believer in continuous learning, but not just general knowledge. He talks about finding mentors, he calls them his heroes, and then really diving deep into specific areas. You know, studying how someone like Donald Trump negotiates real estate deals or understanding Warren Buffett's approach to investing.
It's like finding those shortcuts, right? Like, why reinvent the wheel when you can learn from the best? But even with all the right knowledge and tools, people still struggle with money, right? Kiyosaki talks about those 5 reasons people fail financially: fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
You know what? He's not wrong. Those are real obstacles that we all face at some point.
Out of all of those, I'd have to say fear is a big one for me. That fear of the unknown, the fear of making a mistake, especially when it comes to our hard-earned money.
Absolutely. And Kiyosaki has this great analogy. He talks about thinking like a Texan, embracing calculated risks and understanding that setbacks are just part of the journey.
So instead of asking, what if I fail? Maybe we should be asking, how can I afford it? Just like Kiyosaki suggests. It's about shifting that internal dialogue from doubt to possibility.
It's about changing your mindset from I can't to how can I. That simple shift can make all the difference.
And one of the things that really resonated with me is how Kiyosaki talks about the education system, often preparing us to work for money instead of having our money work for us.
It's so true. We're taught to follow the rules, get a good job, and climb the corporate ladder, but we're rarely taught about financial literacy or how to build wealth outside of a traditional job.
So it's not necessarily about saying don't get a job. It's about recognizing that there are other ways to build wealth and secure your financial future.
Exactly. And Kiyosaki's whole message is about empowering people to take control of their finances, regardless of their background or education level. Remember that story about Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's?
Yeah, wasn't he a milkshake machine salesman before that?
Exactly. And Kiyosaki points out that Kroc wasn't just building a fast food empire. He was actually in the real estate business. He understood that the real value was in owning the land under those golden arches.
That's such a brilliant example of thinking outside the box, of seeing the bigger picture that most people miss.
Exactly. And that's what Kiyosaki wants us to do. He wants us to look beyond the obvious and start building our own asset columns.
So it's about diversifying our income streams, right? Moving beyond earned income and exploring passive income and portfolio income.
Exactly. Most of us are stuck in that earned income bracket, trading time for dollars. But there are other ways to generate wealth.
Okay, so break it down for us. What are the differences between those types of income?
Sure. So earned income is what we typically get from a job, right? It's what we work for every day, but it's also the most heavily taxed. Then you have passive income, which is money that flows in without us actively working for it. Things like rental properties or dividends from investments. And finally, there's portfolio income, which is generated from our investments in stocks, bonds, or businesses.
So the more we can shift from relying solely on earned income to generating passive and portfolio income, the more financially secure we become.
Exactly. It's about creating multiple streams of income so that you're not reliant on any one source. And this is where the importance of understanding assets and liabilities comes back into play.
Okay, because this is a concept that I think trips a lot of people up, especially when it comes to something like a house.
Right. We're conditioned to think of our home as this valuable asset, but Kiyosaki argues that it's often a liability masquerading as one.
Really? But everyone says your home is your biggest asset.
That's the misconception. Think about it. Your mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, all those never-ending repairs, they're all paid with after-tax dollars. It's money flowing out of your pocket, not into it.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, and he even tells this story about his wife's parents who retired and then had to face property taxes of $1,000 a month. That's a huge chunk of their retirement income just vanishing.
Yikes. Okay, so if that's not a true asset, then what is? What does a real asset look like in Kiyosaki's world?
A true asset puts money in your pocket. It could be a business you own, rental properties, stocks, bonds, intellectual property,
Yeah.
anything that generates income even when you're not actively working at it.
So it's like having your money work for you 24/7, even while you sleep?
Exactly. And that's the beauty of building an asset column. It's about creating a system that generates wealth for you over the long term.
So it sounds like the key takeaway here is to start thinking about money differently, to challenge those traditional beliefs about assets and liabilities, and to really understand the power of financial literacy.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's never too late to start. Kiyosaki emphasizes that anyone can learn these principles and achieve financial freedom. It's all about mindset education and taking action.
And he walks the walk too, right? Like starting that first business at 9 years old, it wasn't your typical lemonade stand either.
Mouthing down toothpaste tubes. Talk about thinking outside the box.
It's just brilliant how his rich dad was already planting those seeds, teaching him to see opportunity where others saw trash.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about quick wins either. Remember how we made Kiyosaki work for free at his convenience store for weeks?
Yeah, it felt like a slap in the face at the time, but looking back, it was a pretty clever lesson.
A lesson in delayed gratification, in the real value of hard work. His rich dad knew exactly what he was doing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He wanted Kiyosaki to experience that feeling of being stuck in a low-paying job to understand why building assets is so important.
Exactly. And you know what? It worked? Kiyosaki took that experience, and his entrepreneurial spirit just ignited.
That whole comic book library thing, too.
Right.
Turning something he loved into a profitable business.
He learned to spot those opportunities that most people overlook.
Okay, so let's say you're sold on all of this. You're ready to embrace the rich dad philosophy. You're educated. You're motivated. You're ready to take some calculated risks. Where do you even begin?
Well, luckily for us, Kiyosaki lays it all out in his 10 action steps. It's like a roadmap to building wealth.
And these aren't just vague ideas either, right? He gives you actual concrete steps you can take.
Exactly. From attending seminars to learning how to raise capital, he even talks about how you can start small. Like a $5,000 investment can grow into $1 million asset with the right approach.
It's about taking that first step, proving to yourself that you're serious about changing your financial future.
100%. So are you ready to dive into those action steps?
Let's do it. Starting with number 1, Find a reason greater than reality. The power of spirit.
This is all about your why, Kiyosaki says. You have to have a strong reason for wanting to achieve financial freedom.
It can't just be about the money, right?
Yeah.
You need a deeper purpose, something that truly motivates you.
Exactly. Because, let's face it, building wealth takes work. There are going to be challenges, setbacks, moments when you want to give up.
Having that strong why, that clear vision, keeps you going when things get tough.
Absolutely. And that leads us to step number 2. Make daily choices. The power of choice.
This is where Kiyosaki reminds us that we're in control of our lives. Every choice we make every day shapes our reality.
Even those small, seemingly insignificant decisions, they add up over time.
It's about being intentional with your time, your money, your energy, making sure your actions are aligned with your goals.
Exactly. Because success isn't about some grand gesture. It's about those small, consistent choices we make, day after day.
Okay, so on to step number 3. Choose friends carefully. The power of association.
Now, this one's not about ditching your friends if they don't share your financial ambitions.
It's more about being mindful of the company you keep, right?
Exactly. It's about surrounding yourself with people who inspire you, who support your goals, who challenge you to grow.
People who celebrate your successes and offer a helping hand when you stumble.
Exactly. Because positive energy is contagious, and so is negativity. Choose your circle wisely.
Okay, so step number 4. Master a formula and then learn a new one. The power of learning quickly.
This one's all about focusing your learning on what truly moves the needle.
Like when Kiyosaki took that weekend course on buying real estate foreclosures, he learned the formula, applied it, and it changed his life.
Exactly. It's about becoming an expert in a specific area, mastering those skills that will directly contribute to your success.
And once you've mastered one formula, don't stop there. Keep learning, keep growing, keep expanding your knowledge.
Absolutely. The world is constantly changing, so we need to be constantly evolving too.
All right, on to step number 5, and this one's a big one. Pay yourself first. The power of self-discipline.
This is where things start to get really interesting. This principle is all about flipping the script on how we typically handle our finances.
Instead of paying our bills first and saving what's left over, Kiyosaki says we should prioritize our savings and investments.
Exactly. Pay yourself first, even if it's just a small amount. Make it a non-negotiable part of your budget.
Because if we wait till the end of the month to see what's left, there's often nothing left, right?
Exactly. It's about breaking free from that paycheck-to-paycheck cycle and making your financial well-being a priority.
Okay, so step number 6. Pay your brokers well. The power of good advice.
This one's all about recognizing that you don't have to do everything yourself. Sometimes it pays to seek out expert advice.
Whether it's a financial advisor, a real estate agent, a lawyer, finding the right experts can save you time, money, and a lot of headaches.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to pay for quality advice. It's an investment in your future.
It's like Kiyosaki says, people will tip a waiter 15% for mediocre service, but hesitate to pay a broker 3% for a major investment.
It's true. We often undervalue the very people who can help us build wealth. Okay, are you ready for step number 7? This one usually raises some eyebrows.
Hit me with it.
Number 7, be an Indian giver. The power of getting something for nothing.
Okay, I see why that one might cause some controversy.
But it's not about being unethical. It's about understanding the power of leverage. Using other people's money to build your asset column.
Like when he talks about buying properties with very little of his own money down, he was a master at finding creative financing solutions.
Exactly. It's about mastering the art of the deal, using those strategies to your advantage.
So step number 8, assets buy luxuries. The power of focus.
This one's all about delaying gratification, about shifting your mindset around spending.
Instead of using your earned income to buy fancy things, let your assets pay for them.
Exactly. Remember the story about his wife wanting to buy a Mercedes?
She waited 4 years until their real estate investments generated enough cash flow to cover it. What a power move.
It showed that they were in control of their finances, not the other way around.
Okay, so step number 9, overcome obstacles. The power of self-belief.
This is where Kiyosaki revisits those 5 reasons people fail financially. Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
He's not letting us off the hook with these. It's about recognizing those internal obstacles and actively working to overcome them.
Exactly, because we all face these challenges at some point. It's about how we choose to respond that makes all the difference.
So let's break them down, starting with fear. Any tips on dealing with that?
Well, Kiyosaki talks about embracing calculated risks, about thinking like a Texan, Not being reckless, but being willing to step outside your comfort zone.
And what about cynicism? That voice that says, this will never work?
Kiyosaki says cynicism is often just fear disguised as intelligence. Challenge those cynical thoughts. Are they based on reality or just your own limiting beliefs?
And I love how he talks about laziness. He's not talking about being physically lazy, but mentally lazy.
Exactly. It's about that willingness to think differently, to challenge the status quo, to put in the mental work.
And replacing I can't afford it with how can I afford it can be a game changer.
It's all about shifting your perspective from problems to possibilities.
Love it. Okay, what about bad habits?
Kiyosaki says, our lives are a reflection of our habits more than our education. So true.
So true. We can have all the knowledge in the world, but if we don't put it into practice through consistent action, it means nothing.
Exactly. Identify those habits that are holding you back and replace them with ones that support your goals.
Okay, and last but not least, arrogance.
Kiyosaki says arrogance is often a mask for ignorance. Be open to learning from others. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you.
It's about staying humble, recognizing that we never stop learning and growing.
Exactly. All right, ready for the 10th and final action step.
Bring it on.
Number 10. Start small. The power of action.
This one's all about taking that first step, no matter how small it may seem.
Because so often we get caught up in wanting everything to be perfect. We overthink, we procrastinate, and we end up doing nothing.
Kiyosaki reminds us that even the biggest companies started somewhere small. It's about taking action and then learning and adjusting along the way.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to start before you feel ready. Because action creates momentum, and momentum leads to results.
It's amazing how those small steps can lead to huge results over time, right?
Totally. And, one area where that really hits home is taxes.
Oh, yeah. Kiyosaki definitely doesn't shy away from that topic. He really wants us to understand the rules of the game when it comes to taxes.
He doesn't want us just blindly paying them. He wants us to understand how the system works and how to use it to our advantage.
Which can be a bit controversial, right? Because we're often told that the wealthy should pay more in taxes.
And Kiyosaki's point isn't that the rich shouldn't pay taxes. It's that they often play by a different set of rules. They understand how to use corporations and other legal structures to minimize their tax burden.
So it's about being financially savvy, understanding the tax code, and not just handing over a huge chunk of your earnings unnecessarily.
Exactly. Kiyosaki's all about working smarter, not just harder. He wants us to be financially intelligent in all areas of our lives.
Okay, so we've talked about assets, liabilities, taxes. What other nuggets of wisdom does Kiyosaki offer when it comes to building wealth?
Well, he's a big believer in becoming an expert in something. He talks a lot about the importance of specialized knowledge.
So finding your niche and really owning it right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he also cautions against over-specialization, especially in today's job market.
Because what happens if your area expertise becomes obsolete?
Exactly. So instead of going too narrow, he suggests trying to know a little about a lot.
Developing a broader skill set that makes you adaptable and valuable in any economy.
Exactly. And he encourages us to seek out experiences that teach us valuable skills, even if they're not directly related to our current job.
It's like how his rich dad had him work in all different areas of his businesses, right? To get a well-rounded understanding of how things work.
Exactly. And you know what else he's a huge component of? Sales and marketing.
Really? Those aren't skills we typically associate with, like, personal finance.
I know. But Kiyosaki believes that everyone should master those skills, regardless of their profession.
Interesting. Why is that?
He says, the ability to sell, to communicate effectively with another human being is the foundation of personal success. And you know what? He's right.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it makes a lot of sense. Being able to communicate your ideas persuasively, to negotiate, to build relationships, those are essential skills for any field.
Exactly. And Kiyosaki even suggests taking a sales job or joining a network marketing company just to hone those skills.
Wow, so stepping outside your comfort zone to really challenge yourself and develop that confidence.
Exactly. And along with being a good learner, you know what else Kiyosaki stresses?
What's that?
Becoming a good teacher.
Teaching. How does that tie into building wealth?
Kiyosaki believes that when you teach what you've learned, it reinforces your own understanding and helps you solidify your expertise.
Ah, so it's like taking your knowledge to the next level by sharing it with others.
Exactly. And it also ties into the idea of giving back, of being charitable. Kiyosaki says to be truly rich, we need to be able to give as well as receive.
I love that idea of abundance, that the more you give, the more you receive.
Absolutely. And he applies that principle not just to money, but to knowledge, time, and energy as well.
It's about recognizing that true wealth encompasses so much more than just our bank accounts.
100%. And, speaking of inspiration, Kiyosaki is a firm believer in the power of heroes.
Oh, yeah, he talks about that a lot, how he had his baseball heroes growing up.
Exactly. And as he got older, he started admiring people like Donald Trump, Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch.
He really studied their strategies, their mindsets. He wanted to understand what made them successful.
And he encourages us to do the same. Find those heroes in your own life. The people who inspire you, who make success seem attainable.
Because their stories show us what's possible, right? They light the path.
Exactly. Kiyosaki says, when it comes to investing, too many people make it sound complicated. Instead, find heroes who make it look easy.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the complexity of it all, find those who have already achieved what you want and learn from them.
Exactly. Model their success, adapt their strategies, and create your own path.
As we wrap up our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I keep coming back to one of Kiyosaki's most powerful statements. He says, the rich buy assets, the poor only have expenses, the middle class buy liabilities they think are assets.
It's such a simple statement, but it really cuts to the core of his message, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a reminder that financial literacy is key, that understanding those fundamental differences between assets and liabilities can make or break our financial futures.
Absolutely. And you know what else he says? He says that financial IQ is actually the synergy of many skills and talents.
So it's not just about being good at math or landing a high-paying job. It's about developing a well-rounded understanding of personal finance.
Exactly. From mastering the basics of accounting to understanding how to invest to even having a grasp of the law, it's about becoming financially fluent.
Because ultimately, that's what Kiyosaki wants for all of us, right? To become financially intelligent, to take control of our money, and create lives of abundance.
100%. He's given us the tools, the inspiration, the roadmap. Now it's up to us to take action.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I want to hear from you. What resonated most? What are you going to do differently? Are you ready to challenge your assumptions, step outside your comfort zone, and start building your own path to financial freedom? Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.